Amanda Fry and I will be walking you through a number of topics related to AI, hopefully in a manner that helps you begin to think about it in your business, both from a capability and functionality perspective, a transformation perspective, as well as a risk management perspective. We're going to cut through the buzzwords. There's a lot of hype and buzzwords that, unless they're defined, really don't mean anything in the market. We believe there's 5 dimensions of foundation to develop and implement AI. Companies have unique choices of building, buying, or extending the AI tools that are available to them. We'll talk about how AI enables growth and how you need to manage risk, and then we'll take and recommend some next steps that will help you take action and move forward with AI in your business. I am Doug Davidson. I am the Director of Business Technology Solutions with GBQ Partners. We are a full-service IT consulting team. Most of my time is spent working with people very similar to some of you. Some of you are familiar faces, but I sit down and speak to the risks that are involved in transformation, the risks that are involved in meeting compliance, security, and other related topics on a business level. As Amanda and I joke, when we talk about the AI topic, I am more of the doom and gloom person. What risks need to be identified and managed. She's more rainbows and unicorns, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Amanda Fry. I am the CEO of Talent Crowd, a division of GBQ. We focus on enterprise business process improvement, staff augmentation, and technology consulting around the people, process, and culture of technology, because those 2 things have to go hand in hand for technology implementations to be successful.
So a brief walk through who we are as a collective team. The Business Technology Solutions team, augmented with our Talent Crowd division, allows us to do a number of things. Traditionally, we've been in place for 10 years. We have done risk management, cybersecurity, and IT governance. We've helped organizations identify the risks, manage them with a variety of controls and processes internally. We've looked at cybersecurity. We've provided testing services, as well as services that safeguard an organization. And then it's not a very sexy or exciting topic, but we help firms organize to build governance oversight over their IT organization, staffing, strategy, spending, expense management, things of that sort. We acquired Talent Crowd in 2025, and with them and their consulting capabilities, we have added a set of services that includes AI and automation. Uniquely, we can do both the risk side as well as the solution side of working with firms that want to adopt AI. We help companies with data and analytics. As you'll learn today, sometimes it's not an AI problem, but it's an analytics problem, or rather an analytics solution that the client needs. And then we are involved in a number of projects helping clients select a new ERP system. There's a tremendous number of, there's a lot of movement in that market. Somewhere between 30 to 50% of firms in our portfolio will make a decision to move to a new business system in the next 2 years, given some of the changes in that market, and we're here to help in that space as well.
All right. So there's a lot of fear and uncertainty around AI and technology in general right now. So I always find it important to really understand what something is before you try to implement it. So one of the things I say to my team all the time, and they're probably tired of hearing me say, is that words matter. So when we start talking about artificial intelligence, we need to understand what that means and where it came from. So I like to start with this timeline that shows AI isn't necessarily something brand new that happened in the last few years. It's been around conceptually since the 50s or earlier. So in the 1950s, Alan Turing did a bunch of work on neural networks. If you have not seen the movie Enigma, I strongly suggest that you watch it. It is amazing. But this is really where the start of AI began. Then, from the work that he pioneered, in the 60s, we started to get things like rule-based engines. So if you think about decision trees or if-then statements. So in the 2000s, we start getting personal computers and we have computer chips. So now we have more power to be able to process larger amounts of data without having a computer the size of an entire building. Then in the 2010s, the neural networks really start to evolve, and this is where we get deep learning. So this is where we start to see the Siris and the Alexas and the other voice assistants come out. Then in 2022, this is where most people think that AI exploded out of nowhere, but this is really when the world of generative AI became mainstream and allowed everyone access to things that before required pretty complex coding. So this is where we've lived for the last 3+ years now. And now where we're going is autonomous AI, agentic AI, and all of these other things that everybody's talking about but doesn't necessarily understand. Slide. So I want to break down the words related to artificial intelligence that sometimes are conflated. There's artificial intelligence, there's automation, and there's analytics. Those three things are really the core foundation of all technology that exists right now. So a lot of times people will say artificial intelligence, but they might mean one of the others. So when we say artificial intelligence, what do we actually mean? AI itself involves machines that are processing information in a way that's making decisions. It's problem solving. It's mimicking human intelligence. The distinction is that AI is learning and adapting from input or prompts or files or information that you're giving it, which is not what traditional rule-based automation that we're used to using for the last 20 years does. So why does this matter? AI itself is transformative, and we want to use it in areas where we need high judgment, particularly in our world that works well for things like accounting. Slide. So a lot of times when people say AI, what they mean or what they actually need is automation. Now, automation compared to AI, automation is for something that can be really well defined and replicated over and over and over again at scale. Automation can increase efficiency in that way. It can make things very accurate. It can take the human element out of a process by streamlining repetitive tasks and freeing up more time so that people can focus on more strategic work. Now, AI can or could do that, but AI has a lot of other variables like bias and different ways that it's learning and processing and changing over time. So you can't necessarily guarantee that you're going to get the same result. So if it's something that is very, very definable, you want automation so that you can guarantee quality and consistency in that repetition. Plus, you don't want to use a tool that may cost more for something that can be done fairly relatively inexpensively. So our goal here is that AI can improve our decisions where automation improves our execution of our processes. So if we're automating something that can follow rules and workflows, we can then use AI on top of it to look for patterns or look for inconsistencies in something in a process so that we can improve it over time. Next slide. Okay, so analytics is the third part of this, what I call the trifecta of transformation. Analytics, AI, and automation work together by allowing us to come full circle. So analytics capture and validate the data. So this looks like reporting. It could look like dashboards, but it could also look like validation of a process. So if we're automating and streamlining processes, we're using AI to make decisions within those processes, then analytics becomes the validation engine. So did our assumptions of automating this process come true? Do we have a standard for which we want to have quality? Are we meeting those quality standards? If not, why? So we want to make sure that we're coming full circle with all three of these in each process to make sure that we're being as efficient and continuing to improve the process over time. Next slide. Okay. So now we want to set a framework for this shared language around AI and automation and analytics. And the way that I define this is the readiness framework has 4 pieces in any defined process. You always have an intake, so you're capturing a request or data, something that you can pull in a clean, structured way. Then we're going to make a decision on that. What is the action that we're trying to take from the intake information? So what is the trigger? What is the decision or path in the decision tree that we're trying to take? Then we're going to do that action. So based on the decision that was made, what is the action that we're taking and how do we fully execute on that action? And then number 4 is the full circle of the analytics. So what are we learning from this process and the action that we took? We're measuring the results. We're looking at feedback. We're improving the process for intake. We're improving the decision-making process along the way so we can continue to refine and continuously improve those processes. Next slide. So with any process, whether it's AI or automation or an analytics dashboard, we always want to have humans in the middle, and that's on purpose. Because when we take humans out of the mix, that's when a process can go unchecked. If we move from a standard deviation in a process for quality, over a short period of time, that's not a big deal. But if we allow it to go on for a long period of time, now we're significantly further away from our baseline than we wanted to be. So we need to make sure that people are reviewing the decisions that are being made in a process, that somebody may actually be clicking a button in a higher, more regulated environment for a process. And we want to make sure that the accountability is always there. And this is something we're going to talk about a little later in the presentation. But a lot of industries and now a lot of regulations and rules that are coming out are going to look for accountability in how companies are using AI. And if we can't point back to where the decision was made and that we have tracking and accountability for the types of information we're putting out with AI, then we're going to put ourselves in a place where we have risk. This also prevents people from buying random tools. There's a lot of really great looking tools out there that spout that they're using AI. But when we're really defining our processes, when humans are in the middle, when we have automation, we can make better decisions on the tools that we're purchasing, which will also reduce our risk down the line. So to reiterate, we're going to intake information, whether that's analytics that are validating our data quality, we're flagging gaps. We could use AI to classify and extract data, whether that's from a document or a text or a voicemail, an image. We could use automation to log requests and route things to different places. In the action section, we can use analytics to monitor the flow and our exception rates. We could use AI to draft content, whether that's an email or a notification. We could then have a human in the middle to actually make a review or make an action based on that decision. And then the automation can move the data. It can update a ticket. It can send messages on behalf of the system. Then within the decision flow, Analytics are going to show us the facts and the trends so that we can frame the choice for that decision. We could use AI to predict or draft a recommendation with a confidence score for that decision. And then automation can wait for an approval or a rule and then fire off the next sequence in that process. And then as we take it full circle, when we're learning, the analytics can compare the outcomes of the goals and define the success criteria for how well did we do against our baseline. The AI can adapt prompts or models based on feedback. So it's continuously learning and improving. And then automation can schedule reviews and push findings to the people who own this process. Next slide. So here's a pretty simple example of all three of the things working in tandem in a process that everybody should be fairly familiar with. So a customer emails in asking for a refund for something that they've bought. In this process, once the email is received, we could have AI read the email and then tag it as a refund request. We could automate adding an order number to it. We could also have automation open a case in the ticketing system and attach the context from the email. Then in the decision phase, we could have analytics show us what our refund policy is and what the recent trends are on that product. Then AI could draft a response, recommendation to approve or deny that refund request based on the policy rules. And then we could have a human, an agent, that reviews and then actually makes the decision and pushes a yes or no button. Then from that action, we could automate the process to actually send the refund to the customer. It could send the reply email that was drafted by AI. It could also update the CRM with the information that was provided. And then it could also close the case or the ticket in the ticketing system. And then closing the loop, we could use the analytics to track the time to resolution. So how long did it take from the time that we received the email to the time that we closed the ticket? We could have AI log common edits to improve the next draft. And the team should be reviewing the results weekly or monthly, whatever that looks like, to improve the process so it is as automated as possible. And in this, there was only one action from a human, which was reading a recommendation and pushing yes or no. So this is the type of thing that can be automated and reduce the amount of time required by humans so that they can focus on higher, more value-added work. Next slide.
So we're going to begin to talk about the risks involved if we speak to that process, intake, action, decision, and learn. There are a number of exposures that firms have to address and deal with. Traditionally, it's a starting point. Traditionally, cybersecurity or information security is focused on a triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Confidentiality is a characteristic of information that only those that are supposed to have access to it have access to it. Availability is fairly simple. When I sit down to work, my system, my data, my application is available for me to work on that in that environment, whatever that might be. And integrity, you can think about it more of a pedestrian term like accuracy, but that is, can you trust the data? Is it something that you can trust? And many times we are talking to IT leaders and business leaders that are cybersecurity or security aware, and they're very concerned about the confidentiality, integrity, and availability issues related to AI. And there are many. We could accidentally put information in a public model and lose confidentiality. We can build a AI process, an AI supported process, and tie it into a cloud system. And like Amazon that went down 4 or 5 months ago for about a day, we may not have availability to our system. We've had a client that lost their Microsoft Fabric environment for a couple days. A similar kind of a situation can occur. Integrity is just simply the data is not accurate, and in the AI world, that it can come from a variety of different things. The reality about the CIA triad is that we're also seeing AI attacks, and we're seeing AI used to defend. And so there's a whole conversation around AI in the cybersecurity space, but beginning to worry about cybersecurity, information security, and these three characteristics is really just a starting point, because there's other concerns that go beyond that traditional picture that need to be in our frame of reference when we're managing a risk. First, it's similar to an integrity issue, but it's unique to AI, and that's hallucinations. That is where a fact is generated. It looks like a fact, but it's not accurate. When OpenAI first released ChatGPT, and I began to play around with it, I asked ChatGPT what the best restaurant in Columbus was, and the answer was Spagio. Most of you are from the Columbus area. Spagio was an awesome restaurant. It had been closed for 2 years. There are stories of lawyers stating cases or building cases, listing precedent trials as part of their filings, and they used AI, and AI made up the cases. Those are hallucinations. There are biases and misinformation. If I don't write a prompt with some level of focus and directness, I may get information, either inaccurate information because I didn't ask the right prompt, or I might get a bias. There are some famous cases of failed systems that had biases built into them accidentally. It's been years since we've seen formal redlining in the financial industry, but AI improperly trained can create a financial approval process that redlines and creates a regulatory problem. There are examples of a case in at the federal level of a application that was used to provide sentencing. They would process the information around who the criminal was. They had been convicted, so they definitely were a criminal, and then make recommendations to sentencing. And based on the color of the skin, and only the color of the skin, the AI tool was making decisions about the kind of sentence that criminal should deal with, have justice with, for lack of a better way to say it. And so bias was there. And then lack of transparency is an enormous deal. There are a number of people, and when we talk, go back to what Amanda says, we talk about having that human oversight or human involvement in AI. We need to have observability. We need to know how AI came to that conclusion. We need to be able to look at it. In some industries, if I do the work and then I give it to Amanda and she does the work, and we're both using the AI tool, theoretically, we should come to the same answer. And without observability and transparency, we don't have a way to measure that. And so those are risks that go beyond that traditional confidentiality, integrity, and availability model that we've been focused on in information security and cybersecurity for so long. AI risk is very real. There's current exposures. There are operational risks. Again, if we rely on AI to make decisions and it has bias or hallucinations, then we may make decisions or have agentic AI make decisions for us that are wrong. There is now a history of liability for AI outputs. There was a well-documented case in the insurance world, a hospice, an insurance firm that provided insurance for people at the end of life. their underwriting process was AI supported, and people that were applying for benefits to allow them to go into hospice or into long-term care were denied because there was a flaw in the training that had been done for the AI tool. And in the end, the AI tool was about 10% or 90% accurate. So about 10% of the time, the underwriting came with the conclusion that somebody who is at end of life was not eligible to go to hospice or not eligible to go to long-term care. And so that created a legal liability. Obviously, given the litigious nature of our environment, we're going to see more of that as we go. Very early on, Samsung was a poster child for data breaches. Someone from Samsung, an employee, posted information in an open, a publicly available LLM, and that resulted in some of the code and product specifications to be released to the market. There are other examples. It happened with Apple. Someone, again, an employee, mistakenly posted information in a public LLM in preparation for a board meeting, and there were board level announcements that were confidential that were essentially leaked prior to that event. Those are very real and happening all the time. There are less dramatic, less international focused kind of events. There is a Chevrolet dealership that the AI chatbot was manipulated from the outside to reduce the price on a car. And so that there's an example of AI being attacked, but not having the controls in place to prevent that attack and creating an AI risk. We're beginning to build a pretty large case file of different AI risks that have occurred and will continue to occur as we continue to grow and adapt AI into our businesses. I've been doing this kind of thing, helping firms with information security, privacy, compliance, attainment for most of my career. I remember the days when the web first came out. AI is coming out at such a greater velocity than we ever saw with some of those with web, with mobile, with cloud. It's just seemingly here all at once. Amazingly, the regulators are here all at once. We are seeing regulations where AI data usage, fairness, and transparency are being considered as part of the regulatory model. We're beginning to see, particularly at the state level, which we'll speak to in a moment, expansion of AI regulations. We're seeing international level regulatory changes. The FTC, and this was as of 2025, has been investigating OpenAI. I assume some of the other AI tools are going to be investigated for different reasons. We see emerging laws that are really requiring firms that are building AI tools to have some level of accountability for their algorithms that they're building. We are beginning to see court-ordered data retention for OpenAI. There was a case, unfortunately, a murder case. I believe it was the one in Canada, where OpenAI was able to produce the chatbot conversations that the shooter had with ChatGPT, using that tool to actually plan what they did. And so you're beginning to see court orders that pull that data into the discovery phase, both for criminal and civil kinds of liabilities. I didn't put it on here, but because it's so recent. Just recently, the Department of War, Department of Defense, threatened to name Anthropic for their Claude product as a supply chain risk, which would essentially impact any of us that are using Claude. if we're dealing with businesses that are in the defense supply chain. So the very volatile space now, from a regulatory standpoint, we're beginning to see a number of these kind of things come out, and it's something that we've got to keep our eyes on as we grow and adopt AI into our businesses. I had said we were going to move into the state level. The preponderance of the states are beginning to work on either AI-related legislation, or the privacy legislation that's in place is already addressing that. Ohio does not have any AI related legislation moving through the political system, the legislature. We do have, of course, the Ohio Data Protection Act. We have some data disclosure laws. The Ohio Data Protection Act, when we do a risk assessment, if you're domiciled in Ohio, we'll leave you with a part of our delivery. We'll leave you with a comment in our assessment that talks about being relatively compliant with one of 7 frameworks. The Ohio Data Protection Act gives firms in Ohio tort defense when they can show that they're reasonably compliant with a regulation or a framework. As those 7 frameworks, the various NIST frameworks, HIPAA, and some others, ISO, some others, as those begin to evolve and include AI as part of their controls, that's going to impact us here in Ohio. If I'm doing business in other states, California, Nevada, North Carolina are introducing laws. California also has a very strict privacy law. We've seen clients impacted by AI-related laws in Texas and Minnesota. Colorado, we've seen clients impacted by the privacy law as it's been extended into AI. And so that state level AI and privacy regulation is going to be a continuing movement. There's some questions of whether the feds are at the federal level, they're going to ban AI regulation at the state level. Most of what I've seen suggests that that might happen, but the privacy regulations will not go away, and the two are very, very related. There are a number of other issues that we need to deal with from an automation standpoint. There's the potential with AI to completely impact our data lifecycle, whether that means impacting what should be standard data retention periods, breaking policies for training, validation, and operations. If we don't adopt existing policies to the AI use that we have, we're probably creating a risk deficit that we need to address. There's an expanded attack surface. As I begin to build agents and deploy agentic AI, from a technical standpoint, I'm creating more entities. If you hired 50 employees, you might consider how you're going to manage those employees. If they're all working remotely or they're working in an office, how do I put a wrapper around them to protect them? We need to think the same way when we produce agentic tools, because those essentially, in many cases, can operate as an autonomous entity. And so are we controlling them? That expands the attack surface. We're also extending some of these tools outside of our environment, and that extends the attack surface. So the traditional cybersecurity play where I'm looking at my network needs to now look at my network, look at my cloud platforms, and look at my APIs, the technology I use to make calls to other systems, and to look at the AI implementations I have. There's enormous governance challenges. Most firms in the mid-market have a governance debt. They're not using governance to the level that's required without AI being a part of the picture. AI raises that level. The ability to tell your employees what they can do and can't do is relatively easy, but you need to put controls in place to make sure they're playing or working within those guardrails, and you need to have controls in place to measure that. And then you need to be making decisions at a company level. A lot of those items are not being addressed. We're dealing with AI as a technology deployment, not as a business change, and we're skipping the governance pieces that are critical. There are, for some privacy regulations like GDPR, would include the CCPA from California and HIPAA. There's an expansion of data governance that needs to be included in meeting the compliance requirements with that alphabet soup. Again, there's real risk. We've spoken about model bias and discrimination. If we're training our own AI tools beyond just the prompt writing, we need to have some level of training built into training quality, training observation, training testing to make sure that we're not building bias or discrimination into our model. We need to understand how we're screening algorithms. If I'm selecting a tool, am I looking at the typical security kinds of things I might look at when I do vendor risk, like the SOC 2 or an ISO certification? But I'm also looking at the tool and its use to make sure that I'm not using an algorithm that's going to violate privacy laws or other laws. For instance, the Fair Housing Act requires bias testing and explainability, and in some states, using AI to select tenants or to underwrite loans or to underwrite insurance or to hire people is not allowed. And so to understand first how the algorithms work and whether they meet the requirements you have, and then whether you can do what you want to do at a state level is important. Auditability is very important from a compliance standpoint. There is a story that really started, I think it was in June of last year. Deloitte Australia produced a report for a client. They contractually told the client they were not going to use AI. Someone on the Deloitte team used AI as a shortcut. The report was done for the Australian government, so it was published publicly, and the university that was cited as being the source for many of the references within the document came back and said, first, we didn't do any of that research, and secondly, none of those people work here. It was all hallucinated. Deloitte came back and said, we didn't use AI. And after they continued to investigate, they found out that somebody indeed did use AI as a shortcut. And so we need to have auditability for compliance sake, observability. What are people doing with AI, and can I audit the use of AI to prevent things like what happened to Deloitte, which included in the end them stroking a check back to the Australian government to reimburse them for quite a bit of the fees that had been involved in producing that report. I think I'm going to have Amanda join now, and then both of us will speak. You know, we hear a lot from clients in terms of this word cloud of possibilities. She mentioned one use case with a process to manage client refunds from an email start. We're hearing about complexity, we're hearing about regulations, we're hearing about automation. We're talking to firms that have large addendum systems, I guess is how I would call them, large Excel spreadsheets that are storing or processing information that goes into the ERP system. And part of our role with firms is to hear that word cloud of I think it's accurate to say confusion in the AI space, and help sort through which of the buzzwords apply to your business problem and what risks need to be handled to manage that problem. I'm going to start first, and I'll let Amanda season the taste on this. But we're beginning to, as we talk to clients about AI, their typical request is, should I go with Copilot or ChatGPT or Claude? What AI tool do I use? And we say, stop. What problems do you have? And we see, and many of you probably checked boxes here: inefficient workflows, bad or lack of data analysis. Our systems are disconnected, a lot of manual work, underutilized tools. I think most of us have more tools than we need, that we're paying for. That if we consolidated that problem with AI, we could save some money. Amanda, some of the stories that you've interacted or enjoyed with clients, what stands out off of this list of some examples?
Yeah, so I think a lot of what we're seeing today, and the data out there is supporting it, that there's a lot of outdated technology still in the system. Change is hard, and companies have tools that are older than, maybe they would like. And now they're at a place where either the tool is becoming deprecated or the tool doesn't integrate with other tools that they've now bought. So they have a bunch of siloed systems, a bunch of duplicate or inaccurate data that isn't speaking to each other. And now they want to use the more, flashy, fun technology, and their ecosystem just isn't ready for it. So a lot of the conversation is around, how do we get you out of this older technology? How do we migrate to the newer systems? How do we make the technology that you've already bought work better for you? Configuration management is a huge gap right now. So you've bought all these tools. What are the features that you're already paying for that you're not using? There's a huge opportunity there from what I'm seeing.
So we have a consistent approach. We start with what we refer to as AI readiness foundation. And we believe there are 5 dimensions to AI being successfully implemented in a firm. Strategy and governance. Does the organization know why they're picking AI? The decision of, I'm going to use AI to replace employees versus I'm going to use AI to elevate employees, or I'm going to use AI to manage processes for job classifications I can't hire, I can't find the people. That's a strategy discussion. How I manage, how I oversee AI, that's a governance discussion. So do you have the right strategy and governance in place? Is data enabled? Many of the stories that we hear where there's been a problem with an AI implementation had nothing to do with the selection of the tool, the AI tool. It had everything to do with the data infrastructure. If I turn my AI tool onto bad data, I'm going to get bad results. And most of us have a tremendous data sprawl to address. Many times the data is not properly secured. Improperly secured data will mean AI's pulling data from places that you don't want it to. It will create information available to employees that maybe shouldn't be seeing certain things. There's the tech and tool space, and our belief is, as we said before, you can buy tools, project management, customer relationship management, ERP, project management. There's a ton of tools out there that have AI already built into them. And maybe, particularly in the mid-market, maybe it makes more sense to buy a tool. You may find that you can build AI-related tools and processes on your own that are custom to your organization. So do I build it? Do I buy it? Or do I extend something that I already have? Maybe that's an ERP system that's the core of my financial and accounting practice or department, but I need some additional help in terms of buying commodities for material costs for my manufacturing plant. I can use AI to extend, but understanding where those 3 choices are is important in terms of tech and tools. The operating model, understanding how we're going to deploy, how we're going to manage change. That's an important part of understanding AI. And then Lastly, the people part. I believe, I think Amanda believes too, that AI is not going to replace all of us. It's going to make those that are well trained on AI that much more productive and that much more effective in whatever job they do. It'll certainly replace some job classes or alter greatly some job classes, but for the most part, it's going to elevate us as workers, at least particularly in the knowledge working community. But we need to worry about how we're training people and prompting. We need to worry about helping them to understand the nuances of the various tools that they have. So we use this 5-dimension model. We have a host a workshop. We ask a series of questions. We do the analysis, and after about 2 weeks of analytics, we come back and provide a score in each one of the dimensions that relates to the maturity of that dimension, and include a roadmap of what your next step should be to move forward in your AI journey. Anything in particular to those dimensions you want to add, Amanda, that I might have forgotten?
No, that was perfect, actually.
That's perfect. That's my first perfect of the day. So here's how we can help. We can help with AI automation and strategy. We can help with your data strategy and visualization. Again, maybe it's not an AI problem. Maybe it's a data analytics storytelling problem. They may go together. We can help with the data infrastructure that AI sits on top of. We think it's an overused term, but we can help with digital transformation. At the end of the day, that's applying technology to change your business, make it more competitive, make it more efficient, lower costs, raise profit, applying technology to change the business's transformation. We can help with that. Traditionally, we've been a security and compliance shop. We can certainly help there, both with the traditional confidentiality, integrity, and availability related issues. A thing that we do very well that's very dear to Amanda's heart is change management. Many firms forget that. They roll the tool out and they say, hey, here's your tool, go work. And they don't think about how stressful that can be, how inefficient that can be. They don't think that employees that adopt the tools to their own devices may create issues that the folks that decided to bring the tools in never envisioned. Some of that may be risk, some of it may be innovation, but without change management, controlling that, you can create a number of unintended consequences. And finally, regardless of what the technology topic is, we can provide delivery support to help you architect, implement, develop, operate, test, secure. From the team that we have in Columbus, as well as the extended Talent Crowd bench, we can cover most of the topics that you're going to encounter and do it in a way that's cost effective, does not require a big outlay like hiring a new person or engaging a large firm. So with that, we thank you. We would like to extend, we will share with you, if you've downloaded this, we will share with you the AI readiness checklist. We will share another document on feasibility and impact to help you make some decisions about where to start. And as we do start off with those workshops and the diagnostic on the AI foundation readiness, we'll offer a discount to anybody that's seen this webinar and tells us about it when they reach out to allow them to discount the initial workshop to get started. And with that, I think we're done. We appreciate your time today. Amanda and I both are completely available to have a conversation about where it's going. Some of them are fascinating and fun, but you really need to start talking through what your business problems are so that we can solve it with technology, not create it as a technology purchasing problem. Thank you for your time today.